Donald Trump just dropped a $70 million reality check on Hakeem Jeffries and Nancy Pelosi, turning a routine congressional hearing into the ultimate political showdown. Those who scream the loudest about protecting democracy are usually the ones trying to buy it with a stolen credit card. In Washington, $70 million isn't a scandal, it's just the price tag for a lie wrapped in silk. When the lights of Hearing Room 4 hit those fake masks, the first thing to evaporate is the smugness of those who underestimate the American people. The hearing room is so quiet you can hear the sweat beads forming on the brows of politicians clinging to a ghost of power. Donald Trump isn't sitting there like a defendant, he looks like a judge about to read a final verdict for a failing career. He doesn't need polite introductions or meaningless greetings. His hand reaches into his suit jacket and pulls out a file with a bright red border. The sound of that file sliding across the mahogany table is as sharp as a blade being unsheathed. It stops directly in front of Hakeem Jeffries' tightly clenched hands. $70 million, Trump's voice is calm, but it carries the weight of a Category 5 hurricane. I've seen some bad investments in my time, Hakeem, but burning $70 million just to finance a total defeat is a new world record. You told your Hollywood donors this was the foolproof plan to take back the House. You promised them that if they dumped money into this redistricting war, you'd easily pick up 4 seats. Look at the map, Hakeem, because numbers don't lie for the deep state. Instead of gaining seats, you've been wiped out and Republicans have picked up nearly 20 seats. Hakeem, that's not a rounding error, that is a live, televised political collapse. I actually feel bad for those New York elites who signed those checks for you. You didn't just lose, you paid for the privilege of being humiliated on the world stage. The veins in Jeffries' neck bulge as he grips the table, his jaw set tight enough to shatter. He pulls the microphone closer, creating a screech of feedback that makes the press gallery wince. We are exploring all options to overturn these shocking decisions, Donald. This isn't about finances or your cheap partisan jabs. That money was deployed to protect the sacred pillars of our democracy. We are fighting to stop the MAGA extremists who are trying to silence marginalized voices across this country. You and your allies are drawing illegal biased maps to erase us. We will not sit back while you steal the voting rights of the American people. Nancy Pelosi sits beside him, her face a frozen mask of indignation. She grips the edge of the table like it's the last piece of driftwood from a sinking ship. Her eyes dart toward the red recording lights, knowing that her hedge fund office can't save her from this public reckoning. You have no right to lecture anyone here about maps or money, Donald. Your party orchestrated this entire constitutional crisis from day one. You weaponized state legislatures to suppress the vote. You are the one who started this redistricting war. We are simply doing whatever it takes to protect the integrity of this republic from your relentless sabotage. A slow, predatory smirk spreads across Donald Trump's face. He leans forward, resting his forearms on the table, completely unbothered by their desperate outburst. He looks at Pelosi not as a rival but as a punchline that has finally reached its end. Protecting the republic, is that what you call this pathetic public emotional breakdown happening in front of everyone? You know, Nancy, I remember your arrogant little press conferences at the Capitol. I remember you and Hakeem declaring that Trump started the redistricting war and we finished it. You really thought you had us cornered forever. You believed your liberal judges would rubber stamp your cheating for the rest of your careers. That arrogance, Nancy, it aged like milk in the hot sun. Your fake maps are being shredded in court as we speak. Your billionaire donors are panicking because they realize they bet on a losing horse. Your dream of finishing this war has gone up in smoke. But here's the funny thing for us, it was never actually over. It was just a cheap demoralization operation designed to make patriots give up. And that operation is crashing down right now, right in front of the whole world. You told everyone to keep a stiff upper lip while the tide turned. Well, let's see how stiff that lip stays when the Supreme Court finishes gutting the remains of your fraudulent empire. In this room, the law is not a shield. It is a weapon that just recoiled on the people who tried to fire it. The marble walls of Hearing Room 4 seem to shrink as the weight of the truth begins to settle on the red carpet. Nancy Pelosi leans into her microphone, her voice trembling with a calculated, heavy indignation that she has practiced for decades. We cannot and will not allow rogue MAGA-aligned lower courts to dismantle the progress of the last century. It is clear to anyone with eyes that these local judges are being manipulated by a radical agenda to disenfranchise our base. This is a coordinated assault on the judiciary itself, and we will find a way to restore the balance that you have so recklessly destroyed. The air in the room remains deathly still as her words hang there waiting for a validation that never comes. Donald Trump doesn't wait for her to finish her scripted performance. He reaches for a single crisp sheet of paper resting on the mahogany surface, his movements slow and deliberate. The sound of the paper snapping as he pulls it taut is like a sudden clap in a quiet library. Manipulated courts, Nancy. That's a very interesting theory, especially coming from someone who has spent her career trying to handpick every judge from D.C. to San Francisco. But let's look at the facts, because the facts are having a very bad day for your party. I have right here the decision from the Supreme Court of Virginia handed down just moments ago. This wasn't some rogue lower court or a partisan setup. This was the highest court in the state, and they were very, very clear. The court ruled that Democrats literally broke the law. You didn't just bend the rules, you shattered them because you were terrified of a fair fight. You tried to rig the maps in Virginia to save your own skins, and the Supreme Court just shot you down. The narrator watches, as Pelosi's rehearsed, smile freezes into a jagged line of porcelain. Her eyes dart away from the main television camera, searching for an exit strategy that isn't there. The silence that follows is deafening, filled only by the rapid-fire clicking of camera shutters capturing her moment of legal exposure. I mean, look at the reaction from your people out there on the streets. It's totally embarrassing. I saw a video today of a woman wandering down the street near the Supreme Court just after the decision. She was effectively just going screaming at the sky like the world was ending. This is what unchecked anxiety and panic get for you. It's a shame on every single person who lied to these people and told them that their illegal schemes would work. You've turned your supporters into unhinged screaming wrecks because you can cope with the reality of a lost election. They are snapping on cops, they are having emotional breakdowns in public, and it's all because your demoralization operation finally failed. You tried to demoralize the entire country, but you ended up demoralizing yourselves. It was never actually over, but you told them it was a done deal. Now that operation is coming crashing down and your base is spiraling into a true severe emotional collapse. Hakeem Jeffries slams his hand onto the table, the dull thud echoing through the high ceiling room. He is desperate to pivot, to get the conversation away from the illegal maps in Virginia and back to the racial narrative that usually serves as his armor. This is not about some person on a sidewalk, and you know it. This is about the systematic destruction of black political influence in the state of Tennessee and across the South. You are cheering while a Supreme Court decision guts the Voting Rights Act and allows states to carve up the last Democratic districts in Tennessee. You are destroying our influence by splitting districts that have been represented for decades. You are celebrating the defeat of a white Democrat by a black Republican woman simply because it suits your political map. This is not a victory for the law, it is a victory for Jim Crow too, and the American people see through your theater. The narrator notes the desperation in Jeffries' voice, a frantic attempt to ignore the $70 million hole in his budget and the legal stains on his party's record. Trump doesn't blink, his expression remaining as cool as the air-conditioned room. Jim Crow, really, Hakeem? You're upset because a black Republican woman is likely going to win the 9th district in Tennessee. You're upset that a black woman is going to beat an old white man who has held that seat forever. I thought you guys loved diversity and new voices. CNN was so upset about it they literally cut the feed live during the defeat. They couldn't handle the reality that your ideology is broke, and the American people aren't with you. The Virginia Supreme Court denied your illegal redistricting referendum, and now you whining and crying about it. You want to hide behind the skirt of a 3% win over constitutional protections, but you got defeated by the law. It's great to see the freakouts. Honestly, nothing is better than watching the meltdown of people who thought they were above the rules. You spent $70 million of other people's money and you were defeated, and now you want to complain that the law is being followed. There is no relief for you, Hakeem. There is no higher court. It was the Supreme Court. It's a states' rights issue, and there is no jurisdiction for your tears. You redone. Nancy, you redone. The narrator captures the finality of the moment as Pelosi looks down at her notes, her hands still trembling. The demoralization operation has indeed reversed its course. and the only ones left screaming are the ones who thought they had already won. Diversity is a strategic asset in Washington until the moment the person behind the podium decides to stop reading from the establishment's script. In the hallowed halls of the Capitol, skin color is often used as a human shield to protect the incompetence of the ruling class. Social justice has become a commodity, priced in campaign checks from far-left billionaires who wouldn't spend a single night in the neighborhoods they claim to represent. But when the puppets start cutting their own strings, the puppet masters don't celebrate diversity, they pull the plug and turn off the lights. Welcome back to the front lines, where we strip away the layers of political theater with nothing but the cold, hard, unvarnished truth. The atmosphere in Hearing Room 4 is now so heavy, it feels like the air itself is pressing down on the chest of those sitting at the witness table. Sitting right next to Hakeem Jeffries is Abigail Spanberger, a woman whose entire career reads like a field manual for an intelligence operative. She sits there with the practiced icy composure of an officer, her eyes scanning the room for exits, while Jeffries tries to patch up his tattered moral shield. Jeffries leans into the mic, his voice trembling with a rehearsed cinematic grief as he prepares to play the race card. You can mock our fundraising and you can gloat about your legal wins, Donald, but you cannot deny that you are systematically erasing black influence in Tennessee. The redistricting effort in the 9th District is a blatant attempt to destroy the political agency of voters who have fought for generations to be heard. Abigail and I have analyzed the data, and it is clear that this is a surgical strike designed to dilute the power of marginalized communities. Spanberger nods with a sharp, robotic intensity, her eyes narrowing as she tries to lend some intelligence community weight to Jeffries' hollow accusation. Exactly! This isn't just about maps, it's an attack on the very social fabric of Tennessee's black voters, and we will not let these voices be drowned out by partisan lines. Donald Trump listens in silence, a look of profound mocking pity etched across his face as he waits for them to finish their scripted performance. He doesn't argue with words, he simply reaches into his pocket and pulls out a high-resolution tablet, placing it firmly in the center of the mahogany table. Black influence, that's a very interesting choice of words, Hakeem, especially given what's actually happening on the ground. Trump taps the screen, and the room is suddenly filled with the low, crackling static of a live news broadcast. The screen displays the real-time election results from Tennessee's 9th District, where the numbers are moving in a direction the DNC never saw coming. Take a good look at this, Hakeem, and you too. Abigail, I know someone with your background appreciates raw intelligence over feelings. This is the 9th District of Tennessee, a place that people like Steve Cohen have treated like a personal stronghold for decades. He's an old white Democrat who has held that seat forever by promising things he never delivers. But look at who is currently kicking him out of that seat and sending him into retirement. The screen flashes to an image of a vibrant, powerful black Republican woman standing on a stage, surrounded by cheering supporters. That is a black woman, a Republican, a MAGA warrior who believes in freedom and the American dream. She doesn't represent the power you want to keep, she represents the power of the people to walk away from your failing ideology. Suddenly, the video feed on the tablet cuts to a loud, bright commercial for an antidepressant right in the middle of her victory speech. Trump lets out a booming laugh that echoes off the marble walls, causing Jeffries to visibly recoil. Oh, look at that. Did you see it? CNN just pulled the plug live during the defeat. The second they realized a black woman was about to defeat an old white Democrat, your friends at the network went into a total panic. They couldn't let their audience see the truth that the people you claim to protect are actually the ones leading the charge to replace you. They had to cut to a commercial, they had to hide the reality, because a black person who thinks for themselves is the deep state's ultimate nightmare. Trump leans forward, his eyes locking onto Jeffries like a laser stripping away the last remnants of his dignity. You don't care about skin color, Hakeem. Let's stop pretending for the cameras. You only care about obedience. You want people to stay in the boxes you've built for them so you can keep collecting your $70 million and pretending you're a leader. The moment someone like this woman in Tennessee stands up and says no more, you and your operatives start talking about destroying power. The only thing being destroyed here is your control over a narrative that has been dead for a long time. Jeffries doesn't respond. Instead, he reaches for his water glass, his hand shaking so violently that the ice cubes clatter against the rim. He takes a long, desperate swallow, his Adam's apple bobbing painfully under his expensive tie as he looks to Spanberger for a lifeline. But the intelligence operative is just staring at the blacked-out screen of the tablet, her face pale under the harsh hearing room lights. The narrator watches the scene unfold, noting how the moral shield has been reduced to a pile of scrap metal on the floor. They spent years building a castle out of racial grievance, only to watch it collapse under the weight of a single black woman from Tennessee. They refuse to acknowledge the truth is out in the open now, and all the commercial breaks in the world can't drown out the sound of the establishment's empire crumbling. It's a real shocker, isn't it? Trump adds. One final crushing blow, his voice dropping into a low, powerful rumble. You spent $70 million to buy a lie, and now you have to sit here and watch the truth play out on every screen in America. Welcome to the end of the operation. The scent of expensive furniture polish and the stale, recycled air of the Capitol cannot mask the smell of a dying narrative in the swamp. When the political theater fails, they always retreat to the final fortress of the deep state, the black robes of the judiciary. They truly believe that a gavel and a bench are enough to sanctify a lie, provided the person wearing the robe was vetted by the same cocktail parties that funded the fraud. Welcome to the heart of the machine, where the impartial scales of justice are often weighted with the heavy gold of partisan interest. Nancy Pelosi's breathing is ragged, a sharp whistling sound that betrays the panic rising beneath her designer suit. She slams her palm against the mahogany table with a force that makes the water glasses rattle in their coasters. You may have your little moments of theater, Donald, but this country is still a nation of laws, and we are not finished. If the state courts have been corrupted by your MAGA influence, then we will take every single one of these maps to the federal level. We will place these cases before federal judges who still understand the meaning of the Constitution and the Voting Rights Act. There are still impartial arbiters in this country who will see your redistricting for the illegal power grab that it truly is. You can gloat all you want today, but the federal judiciary will be the final word on your attempt to erase the American voter. The narrator watches as Hakeem Jeffries nods along his face, a mask of desperate hope, clinging to the idea that a higher court will bail them out of their $70 million hole. Donald Trump doesn't look at the cameras. He doesn't even look at Pelosi. He slowly reaches into a leather attaché case and pulls out a heavy manila folder with the word Utah stamped across the front in bold black letters. He slides it into the center of the table, letting it sit there like a ticking time bomb in the middle of a dinner party. Federal judges, Nancy, is that really the tree you want to bark up right now? Because I have something here that might make you want to rethink your faith in these impartial arbiters you love to talk about. Let's talk about big news out of Utah news that broke just moments ago while you were busy rehearsing your lines. You remember that judge who created that fake congressional district, that beautiful deep blue district carved out of a red state like a piece of stolen property? She was your superstar. Hakeem, she was the one the liberals were praising as a hero of justice and equity. Well, that judge just resigned in disgrace today. And she didn't just quit because she was tired of the commute. It turns out she's a perfect example of what unchecked ideological fervor and toxic empathy get you. She's one of those deeply misguided individuals who decided that the law didn't apply to her because her heart was so pure. The investigation found that she was in a secret, intimate relationship with the very attorney who brought the case on behalf of the liberals. Think about that for a second, for the people listening at home who still believe in a fair system. The person wearing the robe and the person arguing the case were sharing more than just legal theories, they were sharing a bed. They created a fake district together, a toxic little island of empathy designed to keep the swamp alive in the desert. And now Republicans are suing to have the whole thing thrown out, or return to sanity before the actual election even happens. You call that independent justice, Nancy? I call it the total debauchery of the American political system. Trump leans back, his eyes cold and unwavering, watching the color drain from Pelosi's face, until she looks like a marble statue of defeat. This is the reality of the people you trust to save you. You don't want impartial judges, you want accomplices who are willing to trade their integrity for a chance to help the DNC. You want people who are so blinded by their own performative guilt and toxic empathy that they'll break every law in the book to feel like they're on the right side of history. But the American people are tired of being lectured by manipulators who treat the Constitution like a suggestion. The judge is gone, the district is failing, and your legal strategy is currently in the dumpster. The Supreme Court of Virginia already told you that you broke the law, and now your star judge in Utah is a national scandal. There is no relief coming from the bench, Hakeem. There is no higher court that is going to fix the fact that you incompetent. You're whining and crying about constitutional protections, but the only thing you trying to protect is your own career. And it's over. It's totally over. The narrator observes Nancy Pelosi as she slowly closes her eyes, her chest heaving as she tries to find a rhythm in her breathing that doesn't scream panic. She tries to take a deep, stabilizing breath, but it catches in her throat, leaving her looking fragile and ancient under the unforgiving heat of the lights. The legal fortress they spent decades building, the one they thought was untouchable, has just been revealed to be a house of cards built on a foundation of scandal. The demoralization operation has not only failed, it has backfired so spectacularly that the architects of the lie are the only ones left feeling the weight of the absolute defeat. It's great to see the freakouts, isn't it? Trump's voice drops to a low, gravelly whisper that carries through every microphone in the room. Nothing is better than watching the meltdown of a corrupt system when the truth finally walks through the door. You spent $70 million to end up with a disgraced judge and a map that's being shredded by the actual law. You got absolutely defeated, Nancy, plain and simple. And the best part is, we haven't even gotten to the midterms yet. If you think this is an emotional breakdown, just wait until you see what happens when the people actually get to vote. The room remains frozen, the only sound being the frantic clicking of a single photographer's camera in the back, capturing the moment the swamp realized there was nowhere left to hide. Best to just put them all to bed, Trump mutters half to himself as he prepares to deliver the next blow to a crumbling empire. The air in hearing room 4 is no longer just cold, it is heavy thick, with the scent of an era that is being forcibly brought to an end. You can almost hear the gears of the old machine grinding to a halt, the oil has run dry, and the parts are beginning to shatter under the pressure of reality. Hakeem Jeffries sits there, his fingers drumming a frantic, uneven rhythm against the wood. A man looking for a door in a room that has become a cage. He leans into the microphone, his voice rising in a desperate final attempt to summon the ghosts of the past to save his failing present. You speak of maps and numbers as if they exist in a vacuum, Donald, but we know the dark history behind these lines. The southern states, these former states of the Confederacy, have never truly rid themselves of their inherent bias. They are showing up now just as they did a century ago, immoral, incompetent, and immature in their desire to silence progress. You are cheering for a movement that seeks to return us to a time of exclusion, using the law as a thin veil for prejudice. We will not apologize for calling out the lingering shadows of the past when they try to steal the future of our voters. The narrator watches as Jeffries clings to this rhetoric like a drowning man, clutching a piece of driftwood, his eyes wide, and searching for any sign of support from the silent gallery. Donald Trump doesn't even flinch at the accusation. He simply adjusts his cufflink and looks at Jeffries with an expression of cold, clinical amusement. The Confederacy, Hakeem, really you? Reaching back 2 centuries because you can handle what happened 2 hours ago. That's the problem with your party. You are so obsessed with the past that you've completely lost touch with the American people in the present. You want to talk about the South? Let's talk about the South, but let's talk about the South that actually exists in 2026. Let's talk about Alabama. Trump pulls a vibrant, high-definition map from his folder and holds it up for the cameras, the deep red ink bleeding across the page like a statement of absolute authority. The Alabama lawmakers didn't just pass a measure, they passed an end to your influence in the state. The brand-new red map for the 2026 congressional elections has been confirmed, and it clears a path that is deep, deep red. All your screaming, all your lawsuits, all your DNC money, it all went up in smoke. The Southern MAGA movement isn't a shadow of the past, it's the light of the future, and it just pushed this map right into your crying faces. You're in full meltdown mode because you realize you can win an argument on the merits, so you try to hide behind a skirt of ancient history. But the voters in Alabama aren't looking back, they re-looking at their wallets, they re-looking at their borders, and they re-looking at you as the problem. The narrator notes the way Jeffries shrinks into his chair, his usual confident posture broken the racial card, having been shattered by a wall of confirmed data. Nancy Pelosi remains silent, her face a pale mask of calculation, but her eyes are fixed on the next document. Trump is sliding toward the center of the table. And then there's South Carolina. I love South Carolina. We won there by 20 points. 20 points, Nancy. Think about that. The people there didn't just vote for me, they voted to get rid of the political relics that have been clogging up their system for decades. Let's talk about your friend Jim Clyburn. He's been there for 33 years. 18 different elections. 18 Hakeem. The guy's 80, he's been in Washington so long he's practically part of the architecture. He has overstayed his welcome by at least 20 years, and Nikki Haley's base is right, he should just leave. But since he won't leave on his own, the South Carolina legislature is doing the work for him. They are redrawing the map, and Jim Clyburn's seat is on the verge of disappearing forever. A 7-0 map is incoming, and there is absolutely nothing you can do to stop it. He's been sitting in that seat like a statue while the world moved on, and now he's realizing that the pedestal is being kicked out from under him. You call it racism because you can't call it democracy, because in a real democracy, people get tired of being represented by relics. It's time to clean house, and South Carolina is leading the way with a broom made of common sense. The narrator observes the shift in the room as a low murmur begins to ripple through the audience, a sound of realization rather than protest. The eternal power of the DNC in the South, once thought to be an immovable force, is being dismantled line by line, district by district in broad daylight. It is a legal, methodical erasure of a machine that forgot who it was supposed to serve, replaced by a red tsunami that is drowning out the old guard. Jeffries reaches for his water glass again, but his throat is so tight he can barely swallow, his eyes darting toward the exit as if expecting the walls to close in. You're rewhining and complaining about Jim Clyburn, but the reality is that he's a relic of a failed ideology. He's the one who stood by while your party destroyed the economy and opened the borders, and now he's paying the price for his loyalty to the swamp. The southern states are sure showing up, Hakeem, but they not showing up for you. They showing up to reclaim their sovereignty from people who think they own their votes because of the color of their skin. The Virginia Supreme Court, Alabama, South Carolina, it's a total defeat across the board. You spent $70 million to protect these relics, and all you got was a front-row seat to their political end. The narrator watches, as Pelosi closes her eyes for a long moment, the silence of the room amplifying the sound of her own defeat. There is no vile assist here, there is only the cold, hard application of the law and the will of a people who have had enough. It's great to see the freakouts, honestly, Trump says, his voice dropping to that low, gravelly tone that signals the end of a round. Nothing is better than watching the elite manipulators realize that their performative empathy doesn't count for extra votes at the ballot box. You losing the House, you losing the South, and you losing your mind. Keep your head on a swivel, Hakeem, because the American people are coming for the rest of your districts next. Best to just put them all to bed. The narrator notes the finality in the air, the way the light seems to dim on the opposition as they realize the map of the future has no place for the ghosts they've been trying to sell. The red tsunami isn't coming, it's already here, and it's washing away 30 years of corruption in a single legal stroke. The hearing isn't an inquiry anymore, it's a funeral for the old way of doing business in Washington. The air in hearing room 4 has turned from chilly to downright frigid. The smell of desperation is stronger now than the scent of expensive stationery or the heavy cologne of Washington insiders. Nancy Pelosi leans toward her microphone, her voice dropping into a low, menacing register that she usually saves for backroom threats. You think your maps can contain the spirit of this country. Donald, you think you can just redraw lines and silence the voices of the people without consequences. There is a reason the people are organized, and they are not going to apologize for fighting back. Those who make peaceful change impossible make disruptive uprisings inevitable. If you steal the power of the people through these corrupt maps, do not be surprised when the anger boils over into the streets. Tennessee was just the beginning. The rebellion of the heart cannot be stopped by a court order. The people are screaming, they are crying, and they are snapping on the very systems you've tried to rig. Donald Trump throws his head back and lets out a booming, genuine laugh that rattles the water glasses on the mahogany table. Oh, Nancy, please. The people. Are you really going to sit there in your designer suit and threaten me with street unrest? Who exactly are you counting on to lead this inevitable uprising of yours? Are you relying on Hassan, the same Hassan who is currently having the meltdown of all meltdowns because the Supreme Court told him He can cheat anymore. I saw his little broadcast today. It was amazing, truly amazing. Nothing is better than watching the total spiraling of a silver spoon-privileged internet personality. He's sitting there in his multi-million-dollar mansion with the heated pool calling for the working class to rise up. I mean, look at this guy. It's a real shocker he's lecturing America about destroying black power while he adjusts his Gucci jacket. He's crying about the Voting Rights Act while the studio light catches those Cartier rings on his fingers. The narrator watches as Trump pulls up a still image of the stream on the tablet, the contrast between the revolutionary rhetoric and the luxury background appearing almost grotesque. Hakeem Jeffries looks away the Adam's apple in his neck, moving in a slow, painful swallow as he realizes the absurdity of their media vanguard. This is your General Nancy, a guy who was raised as a privileged child with a pony. He had a pony, Nancy a pony, and now he's suggesting unrest from a house that costs more than most Americans will see in 3 lifetimes. It's a shocker, truly a real shocker, that you think the American people are going to follow a guy wearing a Gucci tie into battle. He doesn't have the courage. He doesn't have the grit. He's a privileged actor playing a role for clicks and subscribers. He suggests chaos while he's safe behind his security gates and his heated pool. Honestly, it's totally embarrassing. Trump leans in, his eyes locking onto Pelosi with the precision of a heat-seeking missile. You talk about the former Confederate states not ridding themselves of bias. How about you rid yourself of the total delusional hypocrisy of your own media machine, Hassan says. We are destroying power, but the only thing we're redestroying is your ability to use people for your own profit. He wants to make peaceful change impossible. The American people had a peaceful change in 2024, and they're going to have another one in the midterms, and the people leading it won't be wearing Cartier. The silence in the room is heavy with the weight of unmasked truth. The idea of a peopless movement led by champagne socialists in Gucci jackets has turned the DNC's last threat into a bad comedy routine. Pelosi's hand trembles as she reaches for her notes. The power of the masses sounding like a hollow echo in a room where the only real power is currently sitting across from her. Maybe we should just denaturalize and deport him, what do you think? If he hates democracy in America so much that he's calling for chaos, maybe he'd be happier somewhere else. But he won't leave, will he? The heated pool is too nice. The Gucci is too comfortable. He'll stay. He'll keep whining. And he'll keep making money off the same people you've been lying to for 30 years. But we've exposed him. We've exposed all of you. The American people are on our side. And now you're going to see the true spiraling when you lose the midterms. It's going to border on a total emotional breakdown. The narrator notes the way the lights reflect off Pelosi's jewelry, suddenly making her look just as disconnected as the streamer in the heated pool. The revolutionary play has failed, the actors are exposed, and the audience has already stopped believing the script. You spent $70 million to protect a system that is currently being drowned out by the sound of its own freakouts. Hakeem, you should stop drinking that water. It's not helping the problem. This is what happens when your ideology is broke and the people finally see the price tag. Keep your head on a swivel, Nancy, because these people you've empowered are truly unhinged and they're starting to realize you can't protect them anymore. It's great to see it. It really is. Best to just put them all to bed. The narrator observes the finality of the moment, the way the revolutionary threat died not with a bang, but with a laugh. The Gucci rebellion was over before it even started. Trump stands up the tablet, still glowing with the image of a defeated mansion-dwelling socialist. Don't ever look back, Hakeem. It was never actually over. The hearing ends with the sound of shuffling papers and the heavy, silent realization that the elite have no one left to lead their charge. The silver linings are only for those who stayed in the fight, not those hiding in heated pools. The air in hearing room 4 has shifted from the cold, clinical chill of a government building to the stifling, oppressive heat of a failing bunker. The glare of the television lights feels less like a spotlight and more like a high-intensity interrogation lamp for the 2 people sitting across from the man who broke their machine. Hakeem Jeffries sits there, his expensive silk tie looking like a rope that keeps tightening with every tick of the clock. Sweat is beginning to bead on his forehead, shimmering under the LED arrays, like the panic he is desperately trying to mask. His hand reaches for the microphone, and the tremor in his fingers is visible even from the back of the room. His voice, once practiced in the art of the partisan soundbite, now sounds like it's being dragged through a gravel pit. We still have power, Donald, and we are not going anywhere. We are exploring all options to overturn these shocking decisions, and we will mobilize our base like this country has never seen before. We will keep organizing to win, and we will take back the House in the midterms. The American people are tired of this MAGA plan, and they are ready to reject the chaos you've brought to our sacred institutions. We feel like we were trying to get 4 additional seats, and even if this is a temporary setback, we are still the favorites to win the long game. We have the momentum, we have the truth, and we will not be silenced by your redistricting tricks. The narrator watches as Nancy Pelosi nods in a frantic mechanical rhythm, her eyes darting toward the press gallery, as if pleading for a headline that can save her from reality. Donald Trump doesn't even bother looking at the documents on the table. He simply leans back, laces his fingers together, and stares at the ceiling. He lets out a slow, heavy breath, the sound of a man who's already seen the end of the movie, while his opponents are still struggling with the opening credits. He lets the silence in the room stretch until the tension becomes a physical weight, crushing the air out of Jeffries' lungs. You're going to win the midterms, Hakeem. That is a very bold prediction coming from a man who just spent $70 million to get completely dismantled in state courts across the South. $70 million of your donors' money, and you were defeated, and now you're re-sitting here talking about favorite status. It's a real shocker, isn't it? Let me give you a little history lesson because it's clear you've been too busy reading your own press releases to look at the facts. Barack Obama lost 60 seats in his first midterms. 60 seats. That just goes to show you what happens when your ideology is broke and the people finally wake up. Something like that virtually never happens under any circumstances, but it happened to him because he underestimated the American people. And you think you're going to flip the script now. Republicans have already picked up nearly 20 seats, and it might even get worse for you. Republicans are set to keep the House. It's going to happen. A thin margin maybe, but it is going to happen. The narrator notes the way Pelosi's jaw drops slightly. A micro-expression of absolute, unadulterated fear that no amount of cosmetic work can hide. Trump leans forward, his eyes locking onto Jeffries with the cold precision of a man concluding an audit of a bankrupt company. You don't flip the tide in the midterms. Hakeem, history doesn't work that way when you've spent 4 years lying to the public. History is not on your side, and the American people certainly aren't with you. 2024 didn't just break your party. It broke the DNC ideology for good. When you lose these midterms, and you will lose them, you are going to see something unlike anything you've ever seen before. It's going to border on a total emotional collapse for your entire base, a true, severe breakdown. You see, you've been running a demoralization operation for a long time, haven't you, Nancy? You tried to demoralize the entire country into thinking we were finished, that MAGA was a ghost of the past. It was totally embarrassing to watch so many different people, so much despair, so many crashes. But it was never actually over. It was just an operation, and now that operation is coming crashing down right on top of your heads. The narrator observes the light dying out in Pelosi as eyes replaced by the hollow, empty stare of someone who finally realizes the trap has sprung. They recognize the term because it is the very poison they tried to feed the American spirit for a decade, and now they are the ones forced to swallow it. They are whining and crying about losing their grip on power, but the reality is that the map has already been drawn without them. Trump adjusts his cufflinks, the sound of the metal snapping shut echoing like a gavel in a tomb. Keep your head on a swivel, Hakeem, because these people you've empowered are truly unhinged, and they're going to look for someone to blame when the true spiraling starts. Your donors are broke, your ideology is broke, and your time is up. Best to just put them all to bed. The narrator captures the moment the room turns from a hearing into a mausoleum for the old guard's ambitions. The demoralization operation has officially reversed its course, and the ghosts of history are now the only company left for the leaders of the DNC. Look at this face, Trump mutters, glancing at Pelosi one last time. Don't tell me dark energy isn't real. The hearing room remains silent, save for the frantic clicking of cameras documenting the final psychological collapse of the establishment. The heavy crack of the chairman's gavel echoes through hearing room 4 like a final signal ending a long and bitter siege. The sharp wooden sound bounces off the marble walls, demanding a silence that has already been bought and paid for by the crushing weight of the truth. The frantic murmurs of the gallery die down instantly, as the reality of the last hour begins to sink into the red carpet. Nancy Pelosi remains slumped in her chair, her eyes fixed on a spot on the floor, looking like a gambler who just realized she played her last chip an hour ago. Hakeem Jeffries stares at the blank screen of the tablet, his $70 million defeat staring back at him in the darkness of the glass. The narrator watches as Donald Trump slowly pushes his chair back from the mahogany table, the wood groaning softly under the movement. He doesn't look at the cameras, and he doesn't look at the press gallery frantically scribbling their final notes. He stands up with the deliberate, unhurried grace of a man who has already won the fight before he even stepped into the ring. He reaches down and calmly buttons his suit jacket, his eyes never once drifting toward the two people sitting across from him. To him, they are already ghosts, relics of a system that is being dismantled in broad daylight. He leans forward one last time, his shadow stretching across the table and falling over Pelosi's trembling hands. "Keep those tears, Nancy, and you too, Hakeem. You should save them for the donors you lied to, although I doubt they'll be very interested in your excuses anymore. Go back to your offices and start counting those $70 million you just watched go up in smoke. Maybe you can use the ashes to draw yourselves a new map, because the one the law just finished drawing doesn't have a place for you. The Virginia Supreme Court, Alabama, South Carolina, it's over. The lines have been drawn, the districts are set, and the era of the gerrymandered deep state is coming to a very messy end. But the most important thing you need to understand is this: the American people have finally woken up. They saw the cut cables at CNN, they saw the mansions and the heated pools, and they saw the disgraced judges in Utah. They saw the whole lot, and they aren't going back to sleep. So keep whining and crying about democracy, because while you were talking about it, the people were busy taking it back. Good luck in the midterms, you are going to need it." The narrator notes the way Trump turns on his heel without waiting for a response, his silhouette framed by the blinding white light of a dozen camera flashes. The microphones on the table are switched off with a series of dull electronic clicks, leaving the room in a sudden heavy vacuum of sound. Trump walks toward the heavy oak doors of the chamber, his back turned to the wreckage of the DNC leadership. The narrator's voice rises from the shadows, warm, deep, and cuttingly cold. "The battle for the maps has ended, but don't for a second think the war is over. The remnants of the swamp are still hiding in the dark corners of Washington, clinging to their folders and their fading influence. They will still struggle, they will still lie, they will still try to run their demoralization operations on the American spirit. But today, the masks didn't just slip, they fell onto the marble floor and shattered into 1,000 pieces. The performative manipulators and the privileged internet revolutionaries have been exposed for exactly what they are. The light has been turned on and the cockroaches are scrambling for cover. Never back down. Never believe their deceptive tactics. The real game, the one for the soul of this country, is only just beginning. The sound of the heavy doors closing behind the 45th president echoes like a vault being sealed. The hearing is over, the truth is out, and the swamp has never felt more shallow. What do you think about this total collapse of the DNC's redistricting dream? Do you think Hakeem Jeffries can even look his donors in the eye after burning $70 million on a lie? Leave your comments below, hit that like button, share this broadcast with a patriot, and make sure to subscribe. You won't want to miss the secrets we were going to strip bare in the next episode. Keep your head on a swivel, we'll be watching.